There is blind justice, and then there is trading justice, so that you can finally afford to get that laser eye surgery. Not only will people find you more attractive once you ditch those old glasses, you'll be able to see your charts better. That's what we call win-win. Speaking of winning, it's time for a little trading justice, brought to you by TackleTrading.com.
Welcome out to the Trading Justice Podcast, and your host, Matt Justin. My co-host, Tim Justice, is unfortunately not able to be here. He is mentoring an amazing new student down in downtown Salt Lake City today. So I am here by my lonesome, but I do have a special guest, as they are always special. Jeremy Reese he's just by way of introduction, I met Jeremy years ago. Both of us are speakers with the Rich Dad Education Group, Legacy Education. We've been advanced trainers, elite trainers, obviously myself on the stock and the options, currency, commodity standpoint. Jeremy's been on the real estate side. He's a real estate investor. He's been investing for, how long have you been investing for, Jeremy, in terms of the real estate markets?
I actually got started as a student back in July of 2003. Got a mentor within about 3 months. Did my first deal. 10 months after that, quit my job. And shortly after that, started doing free previews. And since July, or 2 years after that, I started teaching our basics. So it's been that's 2005. Yeah, been a while.
Right, 10 years. Both you and I kind of came into this in the same time frame. You obviously on the real estate side, me on the stock side. I came into it in 2005 as well. You know, Jeremy, I was out this past week, and I was in. Sometimes you forget where you're at as a speaker, right? And I was in Denver, and so I was in Thornton, Denver, and I was talking to people about how they can control their financial lives. And, you know, I made a statement. I said, how many of you would love to be out of the rat race in a year? How many of you would love to control your financial future in a year? And people just don't get it. They don't get it that if they can learn how to get their money working, if they can learn how to invest in the real estate markets or the stock markets or whatever market it is, and you get your money working, what that allows you to do is give more time. And I had one guy come up to me and goes, "Man, I've been working for 30 years and I'm not out of the race, and you think I can get out there in a year?" And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, not with your current mindset, no. But now talking to you, Jeremy, and I've known you very, very well for a long time. 10 months within you joining the organization, learning how to invest in real estate, you quit your job and you decided to focus full time on investing, and then you get to a point where you start teaching other people. It's an amazing journey. It's something that other people can really get down with if they can change their mindset. But in your estimation, what is it that stops people like the gentleman I talked to who says, "Well, I've been into it 30 years." And, you know, Jeremy, you've been, basically had this gentleman come up to me, say, he's been in the race for 30 years and now I'm setting a standard of 1 year. What is it that separates you, who can come into this, literally join 3 months later, make your first real estate deal, 10 months later, quit your job? What is the difference between somebody like yourself and somebody like the gentleman that I was dealing with this past weekend?
For me, it always goes back to the mindset. And I was teaching a class. Actually, I'm in the middle of teaching a basic right now online. And with every class that I teach, you have different personality types. You've got the analyzers, you've got the drivers, you've got people that are more amiable, socializers. And some people just want to get right down to it and they want to hear the numbers. But unfortunately, that's not really what's going to serve people right away, because it always goes back to the mindset and the way that we think. And by this, what I mean is that when I was out with my mentor, I remember the second day I was with my mentor looked at me and he said, "Listen, I can teach you everything that I know about business, finance, asset protection, run the numbers on deals, lease options, seller finance, commercial property, and it's not going to do you any good." I said, "What are you talking about? If I knew everything you knew about all those things, I would be a multi-millionaire." He said, "No, you wouldn't, because you're still thinking like an employee." He said, "You have to learn how to think and make decisions like an entrepreneur." And when he said it that way, I understood it. You know, we hear these terms thrown around like mindset, the way you think, and it also becomes cliche in a way. It's like, oh yeah, I got to learn the mindset. I got to learn that stuff, and it just becomes nonchalant. But it really always does start with the way that we think, and so that's the core. That's everything. So it's easier in many instances. It's easier in many instances to start. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, let's identify, a couple different things about what holds those employee mindset people back. Because I agree with you 100%. When you're looking at, the employee versus the entrepreneur, there's a different mindset to a certain extent. And in my estimation, Jeremy, it's because people are socialized to be employers. But I honestly believe that every single one of us were born to be entrepreneurs. So what is it that stops people, what are the top 3 things that you would say separates the entrepreneurial mindset versus that of what we will call the consumer mindset?
I believe there's a solution to every problem. I've been in the process of setting up this company. And I see this company was going to be just one little side income stream for me. It was going to be, $30,000, $50,000 in extra income. I went to a boot camp like, we teach. I went to a 4-day class and instantly found out that in the state that I live in, I was told you can't do this here. And there are no companies per se that do what I do in my state and wouldn't accept that. So what I started doing was realizing that that's an opportunity. That's not a reason why you don't do it. It's a reason why you do it. Now, it took me almost 3 years to get it up and running. But instead of it being one company, it's ended up being 4 at launch. And ultimately, it'll be 9 divisions. I had to incorporate in New Jersey as opposed to the state that I live in, which is Kansas. That's okay. But whereas most people just said, well, you can't do it here. I just said, well, how do you do it? So there's a solution to every problem. Like the rich or we understand tax law. Most people, what they'll do is they just complain and they pay what they're told to pay, as opposed to understanding that, look, the tax code, it's complicated. They go out and they buy a disc, and what do? They run it through a little program and they end up complaining about how much they have to pay. Whereas if they would simply hire a professional, and there have been years where I've paid, and I don't want to scare the listeners out there, where I've paid $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 to have my taxes done. But I can assure you that my tax professional has saved me $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in that same year in taxes.
Well, Jeremy, if you don't mind, let me kind of go on that for a second, because I just for 8 straight years from 2005 till 2013, I basically had my taxes prepared one way. And I met with a tax specialist, the Anderson Law Group, Toby from the Anderson Law Group, who we do business with quite a bit. And basically, he was basically telling me how much more money I have paid in taxes by being cheap, is basically what he told me. And he kind of ran me through some of the numbers, and he talked to me about how I wasn't protected. He talked to me how I didn't have all of my affairs in order. He talked to me about how he said, Matt, you're getting a little older. You're 37, 38 years old now. You got 4 kids, 17 through 6 years old. You got to start preparing for not only their future, but a future hypothetically, and you hate to think about it like this, but what if you died tomorrow? Are your affairs in order to make sure that your family is taken care of? And I'm sitting there going, I'm looking at the numbers I paid in taxes that I probably shouldn't have paid, and it's an ungodly number. I don't even want to say the number. It was so big. And then I think about, making sure that my family is taken care of and doing it the right way. And, it's hiring tax specialists who understand, who are not only understand the tax code, Jeremy, but understand investing, understanding trader status, understanding what you're trying to do from an investor perspective is vitally important as well. And basically he was talking to me. He's like, well, man, at the end of the year, we need to meet in November, not January, to talk about how we're going to approach the next tax season. You can't just walk into an office on February 15th and say, here's my stuff, here's my taxes. You got to do things ahead of time to make sure you're prepared in terms of, and he was talking to me about, okay, do you want to pay more taxes next year? Do you want to pay less? Do you want to shift it over? I mean, and all these things I didn't truly understand, but, I was just like, listen, Toby, whatever you do, just do it. Just here's everything I want you to do. You do it. And I could not have been happier with that decision, even though it was costly. I had to pay some money, right? But at the same time, the peace of mind knowing that your affairs are taken over, especially from a financial perspective with tax specialists, it gives you such a peace of mind that I really can't put a price tag on that, and it makes you feel good. So I completely agree with the tax problem, but I do want to talk about that solution to every problem that you mentioned in the first go around. The difference between you and, say, a consumer mindset. When you were told that Kansas doesn't allow you to do this, so many people are just stuck in their own pocket, their own small pocket of influence, a mile radius from their house to a certain extent, that they don't have the foresight or the vision to say, well, if Kansas isn't going to allow me to do this, other people are doing it, let's go figure it out. And that's when you go to a different state, you incorporate, you make sure you're taken care of. You found a solution to that. So I agree with that. Tax law, solution to every problem. What is your other reason that you would indicate that people, the differences between the entrepreneurial mindset and that of the consumer?
We work to learn as opposed to working for money. There have been so many times when this really becomes fun. I don't just trade my time for money any longer. There comes a point in time where money doesn't become the primary objective. And while the money becomes great, I hit a point in my life, and I was probably, and by the way, did you just tell me you're 37, 38 years old?
37, I'll be 38 in October.
You're young. I just turned 43. I just turned 43 in June.
That's 5 years, Jeremy. That's 5 years. That's not that old.
I turned 43 in June. I just noticed my first two gray hairs, and my first two ever. I'm thinking time to start cutting the hair a little bit shorter. But anyway, the side note. I remember the first. You already have short hair, and just to beach on that, I've been noticing in my beard when I grow one, I got a whole bunch of sparkly in there. It comes to all of us. It comes to all of us. But I don't mind it in the beard. That's fine. That's distinguished. That's like the professor. But on the head is totally different story. But back to working to learn. But working to learn. It really comes down to a point of I remember the first time when I realized, wow, I've learned how to make enough money that I can go out and I can do this. I don't have to work for somebody else. I can have the car I want, the house I want, and all that. And I really wasn't any happier being able to drive a Porsche than I was being able to, drive a Chevy or anything like that. Now, I understand to a lot of our listeners right now that if you haven't experienced that, they might say, well, yeah, let me drive the Porsche. I'll tell you. Folks, I'm here to tell you, the stuff doesn't make you happy. It really amounts to the freedom and what the money allows you to do. And once I really got that through my mind, I realized that once I started working to learn, truly working to learn and following what the passion was, everything changed for me. And I think a lot of it, and I'll tie this up full loop or bring this full circle. Once I got to a point where I was focusing out, and I don't know that I read this. I think Zig Ziglar is maybe the first person that introduced this to me. Once I started focusing out on other people, and the way he really introduced it was, you'll get what you want as soon as you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. I thought he was talking about multi-level marketing, but that's not really it. It was just in business. you'll get what you want when you start helping other people get what they want, my life just changed. And so that would be the other piece of the puzzle per se.
So, Jeremy, you're talking about working to learn, and I know we've had a little bit of internet problems here, but continue discussing the difference between work to learn.
In essence, working to learn, just working, in other words, not trading your time for money, focusing out on other people. Those two concepts really go hand in hand for me. So helping other people get what they want and working to learn, those two things, they're a symbiotic relationship for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, Jeremy, I had a student recently in one of my 3-day basic trainings, a very, very analytical mindset type individual. And I was talking about that exact same difference, because I think that's the number one difference. I think the number one difference between the entrepreneur and the consumer is the consumer works for somebody else's money. And what that does is give somebody else more time, them less time, and so on and so forth. But I was talking to them about, the rich mindset is they won't work for other people. They won't work. They won't make the conscious choice to exchange their time for somebody else's money. And this guy, he says, Matt, I disagree with you. What do you think you're doing right now? You're working for other people. You're working for your students. I said, what do you think the difference is then between you going to a job and me doing what I do? And he didn't know what to say to that. What would you say to somebody who thinks by you being a public speaker, you still have a job?
Well, I always address that right up front, typically within the first couple of hours, because I ask the students, listen, I always get asked the question, if you've got so many companies, if you've got real estate holdings, what are you doing teaching this class? Would anybody like me to address that? And I'll typically get a couple hands up in the air, and that's fine. One is if the first mentor, because I've had 3 that have really made a difference in my life over the last decade plus now, that have made a huge impact on my life. If they had not taken time out of their, days or still out of their life to have mentored me, I would not be where I'm at today. Mm-hmm. So I do believe in giving back. And so that's one reason. 2 is I get a tremendous amount of personal satisfaction in getting that email, getting that phone call from that student that says, we just bought our first, apartment complex. We just bought our first deal. And in fact, there's a couple of students that I had, they're quite a bit younger than I am. They actually just had their second child. They were students of mine in 2010. They did the absolute most they could have done, which was our smallest package at the time. They had never done a real estate deal. They are rock stars. And their names are, Micah and Sonia. And they went out. I've kept in contact with them for the last 5+ years. They did foreclosures and they did, I can't remember what other training they did. Maybe rehabs. They started doing deal after deal after deal after deal. And they just went out about 1.5 years ago, and based on what they learned at that training with me, keeping in contact with me, our advanced trainings, and just keeping moving forward, they went out and bought their first 54-unit apartment complex. That's in a 4.5-year period of time. That brings a tremendous amount of satisfaction to me as the first person that really helped them start that journey. And then I'm always very upfront with them. Do y'all think that I get paid for coming out here and helping you all get started? And the answer is absolutely. I'm 43 years old. If you think that you're done accomplishing all your goals at 43, I plan on being here for another 40 years. I do not plan on sitting around watching TV for the next 40 years. You're going to want to keep doing stuff. So the difference between where I'm at right now at 43 versus where I was at 33 is now I really get to pick and choose the projects and the companies that I open, and I get to follow what I'm passionate about. Whereas at 33, I had to really focus on where do I really think I'm going to make the most money at that point based upon what the market's telling me.
And I approach it too. And what I always tell people is, at the end of the day, my reasons are my own. Why I'm here is my reasons, and they're personal to a certain extent. But every single one of us who have found our success have found it because of the help of others. our mentors, our trainers, our coaches, people who have went out of their way to help us become the traders we are, the investors we are. And we're very thankful for that. And one of the things that I think Robert Kiyosaki, Kim Kiyosaki, and some of the other influences that have influenced both yourself and me throughout the years is one of service. And I always tell people this, Jeremy, I have substantial disagreements with current U.S. foreign policy. I have substantial differences with central banking policy. I have substantial differences with how Wall Street is handling 401ks and retirement accounts and the fees people are paying. And I do not believe you can sit there and complain and bitch and moan from the comfort of your own couch. If you want society to change, don't go get on a blog. That's not going to do a thing. Get out there and force change. Get out there and be the change. And so I talked to them about that. And I think at the end of the day, people understand that. People get it. But there's just a certain amount of people that you're just not going to be able to touch for whatever the reason is. You're just not going to be able to get through to that. I had there's a kid by the name of Kai in my last training in Denver. And he comes up to me on day 3 and he basically says to me, you know what, Matt, I love everything you're doing. I just can't stand your stories. And I started laughing a little bit. And I said, oh, I get it, Kai. I know who you are. Your background in college is probably some type of mathematics or statistics. And it absolutely was. He was a very analytical mind, and I said, Kai, you know what my responsibility is? It's not just to teach you. I have 55 people in there that my responsibility is. And the analytical mindset, the mindset that learns from numbers and content, that is really only about 15 to 20% of the human populace. And so because of that, if all I did, and I was explaining this to Kai, I said, Kai, if all I did was get up there and just run numbers and just basically teach strategies and rules and whatnot, I'm going to tell you right now, not only would I completely overwhelm 85% of my room, by the end of day 3, guess who else I would completely overwhelm? The other 15% of the analytical mindset who thinks all they want is the numbers, but that is not what gets people out of the rat race. That's not what gives people the mindset to become successful. Almost every successful person I've ever met has that mindset, that creative mindset and the analytical mindset. And if they can't get over one or the other, they put people on their team that have the different types of mindsets so they can cover some of their weaknesses. And as I was explaining this to Kai finally looks at me and says, no, man, I get it. I totally get it. But at the same time, he's 24 years old and he doesn't have that, the life experience necessary yet to realize that it's the stories of who we are that makes us who we are, and that gives people the courage necessary to move forward with something that is a little different than what they're accustomed to. But if they can do that, then they can have a story like yours where they make their first deal in 3 months and they quit their job in 10 months, or like countless other people that we know who were students once who are now out of the rat race and basically just investing for a living. And what that allows them to do is get out there and build more businesses. And it's something that's really, really, really cool. And so I appreciate you walking us through that. I want to shift the topic a little bit. I know we don't have that much time here today. And I want to talk about some of the things you're currently doing. And we brought you on the podcast about 8 months ago, and we were talking about how you had this new company you were building. And if you guys want to go out there and listen to that podcast, it was an excellent podcast. But you've kind of expanded that, like you were talking about earlier. Talk to us about what this company is, the actnowfree.com. That's the website. Once again, that is actnow, N-O-W, free.com, and whatnot. And the one thing I didn't mention in your introduction, we talked about you being a real estate investor. You're also FICO certified. You're a credit professional, and that's what this website is about. So talk to us about what this website is, what this company is, and what it can do for the listeners of the podcast?
So this is really, and I talked a moment ago about I'm able to do what my passion or where my passions take me at this point. I am completely involved in the paper aspect of the business. Personal credit, business credit, student loan consolidation. There's over $1 trillion in student loan debt out there. And within 3 weeks, we're adding a new division to the company where we're able to help students or former students find the best solution for them that allows them to find really how they can best handle their student loan debt. And that's coming 3 weeks down the pipeline. What we're able to do right now is we are we're the only company out there that has a direct link to TransUnion and to Experian. And what that means is that we can get the actual credit reports that your mortgage brokers, your bankers, your car dealers, any of the people that would go and pull your credit reports when you went to apply for a loan, we can see those actual reports, the actual scores. So it's not a fake report that you would get from freecreditreport.com or from any annual credit report. We can actually get the actual report, the actual score, and it does not negatively impact your score. So it's what's called a soft pull. We have access to it's patented software. Our software has analyzed over 1 million credit files over the past 2+ decades. We have the capability to show you, and it's highlighted in red, where the most common errors occur on a credit report. We also show you what is currently being deducted from your score from these certain trade items. We provide you with recommendations and give you tools to recover some or all of the most valuable missing points. We provide you with a budgeting program, financial analysis, and financial analysis software. That's one aspect of what we do. So that's on the personal side. On the business side, we are able to set you up with an EIN number, a DMB number. And if any of you have ever tried to go out and open up business credit on your own, what you may have found is that they want you to spend $500, $750 to become a preferred Dun & Bradstreet, in essence, one of their preferred vendors. That is not what we recommend. We can actually walk you through that process, expedite you through that. If you have any questions on this, what I recommend is that you call me at 888-234 FICO. FICO. Again, it's 888-234-FICO. Now, our phones are ringing off the hook. We're just launching this week. So if you get voicemail, and right now the phones are turned off because we're on the podcast, but it's 888-234-FICO. Leave me a message, and we'll be happy to set up a one-on-one personal consultation with a FICO professional. That's someone who's gone through rigorous standards. They are certified and explain to you what best serves you. We are backed by attorneys. If you need personal counseling, we can do that. And we are CROA certified as well. And what that means is that on the personal side, we are guided and bound by certain billing policies. On the personal side, and I have to be very, very careful about how I kind of guide this, Matt, but if you have a judgment or a tax lien, I can't guarantee results, but I have yet to see in our program where we have not been able to remove a tax lien or a judgment. And that's because of the way that we attack personal credit. We actually use the law. We're not one of these fly-by-night kind of spitting out letters. And I'll kind of address that more on a one-on-one basis, but I'm happy to do so. So it's personal credit, it's business credit, it's the credit simulator, which we've analyzed over 1 million credit files, like I've said. And then 3 weeks down the road, we'll have the student loan consolidation program as well.
That is, I look at this, Jeremy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because I'm not an expert on either one of these topics, so maybe this just makes sense to me. But I see credit the same way I see tax. Both of them very, very complex subjects that I don't think 99% of people even grasp conceptually in many, many extents. So when I'm looking at credit, it's as important to make sure that you have people that are trusted people that are watching out for your credit, to make sure that you are having the absolute most pristine credit that you can possibly have, and somebody that's going to work on your behalf as a champion for your credit to go fight some of the things that companies do. Because when you look at when a company reports a credit hit to the credit bureau, the onus is on the consumer. It's not on the company to prove that they have this debt burden that wasn't paid. It's on the consumer to make sure that is handled properly, and that's not fair in any capacity. But that's kind of how the law is written. So I do find it as important to surround yourself with people who understand the credit system and are working on your behalf to the tax system who are working on your behalf. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the reason why I say that is because you can go to a car mechanic. You're more than, I guess, you want to read a book, you can rebuild your transmission. Does that mean it's going to be rebuilt the same way that it's going to be built if you go to a qualified and honest mechanic, or you can represent yourself in court? Does that mean that it's going to be done as well as if you went to an honest attorney?
What it means is you have a fool for an attorney is what it means. So they teach you that first day in law school. But you're absolutely right. If I were to go build a transmission, I guarantee I would probably ruin the entire car. So you might as well just take it to a professional. We surround ourselves in life with professionals, experts. Everybody just does that. If your car breaks down, you take it to a professional. But when it comes to your credit or your taxes, all of a sudden these same consumers who will go to a professional to get their physical car made, they're like, no, I'll just handle the credit discussion. I'll just handle the tax discussion. And it's like, really, what's more important, your car breaking down or you having fine credit? Everything we do in life revolves around having good, solid credit. And so I think what you guys are doing out there is absolutely needed. It's needed for a lot of our listeners. I think it's needed for everybody, to be perfectly honest. And I've seen you grow tremendously over the last year, and it's an honor to be not only be your associate, be your friend, and watch you do some amazingly great things.
Well, thank you very much. And if I can just piggyback on that for 1 second. Mm-hmm. I had a client come to me not even 2 weeks ago, and they had gone to would never bring up another company's name, but they'd gone to kind of a company who just spits out month-to-month letters. And it was $59, $79, $99 per month. Take your pick. And it was just kind of turn and burn. Hey, we'll dispute your credit for you. The problem with that is that if they're just spitting out generic letters on a regular basis and hoping that something sticks to the wall, and it doesn't, if that doesn't work, and then you come to someone like us, if they have admitted something, which is the case that happened in this case. In other words, they've said, yeah, it belongs to us because there's a sequence of events that happens. In other words, we do a certain process. We ask, we then ask again, and then we validate. If on those first two attempts, it doesn't work, and then we go through a validation process where we verify, validate. If somebody else has already admitted that it's yours, if it is yours and you have said it's yours, then you're basically dead to rights at that point. Now, it may have been yours, but there's certain laws in place that it could have been yours, but it has to be both timely and accurate. And so there's ways for us to make sure that it was both reported timely and accurate. But if you said, yes, it's mine, it was timely and accurate, then there's nothing we can do to help that person out. And so this person now has to wait it out. And I'll just kind of clear it up and give you one example of what's called an advanced tactic. Everyone's heard that in most cases, something's on your credit report, aside from bankruptcies, aside from some things like that, it's on your credit report for 10 years or 7 years, correct? Mm-hmm. Not true. For instance, really? Statute of limitations. We've all heard of that, correct? There's something called time barred. So you've got in different states your own statute of limitations. For instance, in Kansas, you could only go after a debt for so long. So in Kansas, you could only go after or pursue a debt, a judgment, for instance, for say 3 years, 5 years, whatever the case may be. Well, if you're going after a debt for a certain period of time in Kansas or North Dakota, don't know what it is, or California, 5 years, then after they continue to go after it after that period of time, you can go after the collection agency and get that removed. If they continue to go after it, the collection agency, what ends up happening is you can go after the collection agency and tell them in a legalese way that it is defamation of character. Now, these are things that we have our attorneys do on the back end. Again, we have an attorney program. We're not just spitting out letters. You're not paying $99 a month. But what would it be worth to you if you had a judgment, if you had a tax lien that was on your credit report and it was stopping you from getting a mortgage, if it was stopping you from getting an auto loan, and it was hurting your credit or dropping your score by 50, 80, 100 points? If you could get that removed from your credit report by 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because your state laws, which is more stringent than the national laws, said that you could do so. Now, this is not where I come into play. This is where I look at the credit report, I see what can be done, and I turn it over to the attorneys that we have on staff. If you all have any questions about this, come see me. I'm FICO certified, and then I'll point you in the right direction. Again, my name is Jeremy Reese. If you have any questions, it is 888-234-FICO.
Awesome, Jeremy. And you've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast with Matt Justice, your host, along with my amazing guest, Jeremy Reese, and he has given out his information. Ladies and gentlemen, it does not hurt you to go get a nice little consultation to see if this is something that can help your credit scores out, see if this is something that you can put another amazing member on your team to make sure your credit is taken care of. So, Jeremy, thank you for coming on the podcast today, and I'm sure we will be doing it in the very near future as well. So, once again, thank you so much. You've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast presented by TackleTrading.com. If you're interested in learning how to invest, if you're interested in learning how to trade, start cash flowing in the market, go over there to TackleTrading.com. Get in the game one trade at a time. We're out.
You've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself and think that the conversations and topics we've covered are important, help spread the word. Give us your feedback. 5 stars on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. The Trading Justice podcast is proudly sponsored by TackleTrading.com. Get off the sidelines and get in the game.